Welcome back to McCarthy Performance. Cylinder head off to 565, just keeps on giving. um, we opened it up to the exact firing ring size of the firing ring for the head gasket, and it did give me a little room. Um, what's happening is the dome is riding up along the combustion chamber. Now, you probably can't see it, but I'll peel the tape back and I'll show you. Okay, it looks like it was sandblasted here. That's not sand. That's not been sandblasted and milled. Of course, you couldn't do that. It would affect the surface. What that is that's the ductile iron seat. They've cut it off enough off this head that the intake valve is above the deck, and that's kind of a normal. It's not uncommon. I checked the valve job on this. Excuse me. Before I put it together and put the head together, if I even had an inkling of knowing how bad these things were messed up, I probably would have never put them together. The valves are level to the deck and they're all relevant. So these heads have been milled a bunch. And if these heads were milled and the combustion chambers weren't touched because they did a lot of welding in here, would these heads have fitted the dome if they were new? Probably not. So anyways, we're moving enough material until we get the dome to clear. And, so basically that is what I did in the last video with the Play-Doh. So we moved the firing ring out, but that's not the problem. The problem is that the chamber is riding on the dome. So what we're going to do, as you can see on this side, I marked it, and I just take a piece of welding rod and I'm running it across the chamber and seeing where the high spot lies. And the high spot shows up on the aluminum rod when I run it across the chamber. And we want to make sure that we're not removing any of the firing ring. Well, that angle on there, let's say it's 10 degrees, maybe less than that, maybe even 5. But what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that every single chamber there's no high spots, and wherever the marker is, we're going to remove it until it's even from the beginning of the chamber radius of the bowl, or radius of the chamber, I'm sorry, by the valve, not the bowl, and it's relatively flat. And this one it is. There's a high spot right here. We're going to take that out a little bit. So what is that going to do? Well, that's going to make each chamber consistent. Now, there's ways you could do it. Maybe you could do it with one of these things, that measures the form. You could measure it this way with a cardboard pattern. You can check it. You could measure this part, and mark each chamber and go in there. Well, this, it ain't CNC ported, which would be a CNC chamber ported head would be nice, but these aren't it. So we got to do it the old way. And you can go from the deck and you can measure down in specific points of the chamber and do that too. But what we're going to do is I'm going to mark each chamber. I've got it scribed, and I'm going to run my welding rod to this point here of the radius where the chamber starts, and I'm going to run it back and forth. And when there's no rock in there, then I know that it's from that angle to there, it's flush, because the chamber, the dome goes up into the chamber at least 1/4 of an inch. So we want to make sure that that's all the same on each one before we put the head back on the engine. And I've had this head on that side over 3 times. So there's more to it than what I thought. I thought I could just open it up, match the firing ring, and be done with it. But it's actually hitting up in here. I got the exhaust side done. That's pretty much the side that we're having the most problems with. Now the intake, I'm going to do that. We weren't having problems, but the problem is is I will show you on the other head when I get it here just how bad these chambers are. They're not even relatively close. Um, you know, you also can fill this combustion chamber up with epoxy, let it set. You can make a plug. You could put like a paste, like yellow oxide. You could coat these chambers and you could push the plug in after you made it. And you could check each one to make sure that it's at least as the same size or possibly a little bigger. You don't want it tighter because it's going to hit. I mean, right here, I had less than 40 thousandths with actually the gasket that I was going to use. I shimmed it up to that height of that gasket. It just ain't going to work. So we're going to, like I said, I run aluminum rod, welding rod, and I just run it across back and forth the chamber, and just from here to here, and I want to make sure that it's not quite touching there. So when I hit this with remove that. You can feel just a little bit of it. We don't want to open this up anymore, but we know it's high right there. So we're going to carefully sand this out with a drum. So this one here has got a lot of rock to it, you can see. It's got a high spot right there. So I'm using an oval, or you could call it an olive, I guess, but we'll call it an oval carbide. I'm just going to lightly go in there because I don't want to take any more of this off. So I just want to go in there lightly. You could use a cylinder too. You could use a flat one, but I don't want it touching here. Okay, and I'm going to take a little marker. You really don't have to, but if you got older eyes, or you want something that's really going to show, marker don't hurt. And then I just take this and run it across there, and I can look down and I can see that I'm relatively flat from here to there. So I'm going to take a little bit off. We're relatively flat. So that angle is consistent from this radius to the firing ring. So we're going to just leave that one alone. We're going to call that good enough for a roll up, basically a sanding roll. I'm going to take a little bit off of that one there. Okay. I'm going to look down it, and I can see that it's flat. That one's pretty close. This one's not. Excuse me. So we got to take a little bit off here. This one looks pretty good. Take a little bit back here off, and then we're going to stop. Okay, that looks good. That looks good. That one looks pretty good. It's a little tight right there, but that sanding drum will take care of that. Or I should say my sanding paper, my sand roll up will take care of that. Yeah, you look pretty good right there. This one ain't bad. This one isn't bad. This one isn't bad at all. It's just right at this edge here, and the sanding roll up would probably take care of Okay, so we're going to mark it. We don't want to go all the way out to our mark line. We're gonna sand up to this point, and we're gonna stop. Probably about an 1/8 to 90 thousandths, somewhere around there. Now, I've done this for a long time, and but I'm not an expert porter. I wouldn't consider myself an expert porter. As far as cutting aluminum and buffing it back and sanding on it, I've done it for an awful long time, and you can see some of the engine blocks that I've polished that were iron. So I'm not a new hand at this, but this is just something that I've come up with. Some people might not do it this way. Obviously, the thing would be to do is get the chamber exactly the way you want it, and then send the heads out and have them digitized and have somebody with a CNC machine do it, because that's the way of the world now. I mean, but this is kind of the old way, and I've done combustion chambers plenty of times, but I've always pretty much eyeballed them. But being that these are so close, it's hard to do that with these, and these have such a significant dome on them that hugs the chamber so closely that this is kind of what we have to do. I'm going to go from a tapered to a straight cartridge roll, because that's going to allow me to lay it flatter, and I'll be able to effectively watch how I remove this material. So I'm going to start at the top, and I'm going to work until I evenly remove the marker. Now I'm going to lay it somewhat flat, but I'm not trying to remove the size of the firing ring. We want to stay back from that. Every pass I make with this laying it relatively flat is about 1/4 of an inch. I'm walking them back, I'm connecting them. I'm going to stop right there. It's got about 60 thousandths right there, just a little bit. Probably goes up to almost 1/4 inch, and it goes back, and I'm going to stop right there. I'm going to do all these to about that point, and then I'm going to go with tapered cone. Now, where the spark plug boss is, this is kind of rinky-dink on all of them. I'm not going to concentrate on that. I'm not going to try to remove any more than they have. I'm going to leave that alone, and that's going to be the way that's going to be. I could smooth them out and make them, obviously the engine isn't going to know, and realistically, it's going to take a lot of time to do that, and I could, but I'm just not going to. I'm working it with a little bit of an angle, so I'm only using about this much, but I'm trying to lay it flat. I want to be mindful that we don't want to change this firing ring diameter. So we can work up to it and we can stop. Now, when we get up to that point there, if we want, we can take a tapered cone to it. There's some little marks in that. Okay, so we're going to do that. We're going to leave that one alone. We're going to leave that alone. welded on, obviously, and there's some stuff that's kind of minor, but I can see where they would weld it. So that's about as far as we're going to go with the drum. We're going to go to a tapered drum now, tapered cone, tapered roll up, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to let that go. I'm going to just lightly touch where I scribed it. Just to make sure that there's no sharp edges. Okay, we're going to call that good. So there's a couple little dingies and dents that could be smoothed out better around the spark plug area. We're going to call that good. We're going to take the bag off of it and try to fit it one more time. Make sure everything fits. I'm going to check it real quick. Welding rod, I'm just going to hold it down and I'm going to look down it. It looks pretty good. Of course, because this is so close, that I'm going to have to check each combustion chamber and make sure that still everything clears. But this is going to take care of the bulk of it, and this one was the actual master, so I'm trying to make everything mirror this one. You know, it's the way I'm doing it. Like I said, I'm not a professional porter, but I've had a die grinder in my hand for the last 40 some years, so actually a little longer than that. So you know, that's how I do this. There's no tricks to it. It's a real pain in the butt, but sometimes you got to do this stuff, and that's what I found works for me. Obviously, I've taped this up, and you can see every once in a while just here where I've slid out, and you know, that's kind of normal. I'd like to say in a perfect world, you know, you never do that, but I'd be lying to you if I told you I never did it because I did it right there and right there. But it's not going to affect anything. It's not going to hurt anything. I can't hook my nail in it. You don't definitely don't want to do that with the carbide. But I'm using 80 grit, and some of it's broke down, so it really isn't going to be an issue. But that's why everything's taped up. You know, and you know, on a in the way you would do these is you would do the combustion chambers before you do anything. You know, before you finish cut on your head. That's usually how I do it. But yeah, just a quick little video. Just maybe somebody will get something out of it. I don't know, but that's kind of what we got going on today. And you know, when you polish these, you can really see the chambers from one to the other. And I used to do that. I would polish them. There's no benefit in a lot of cases of polishing them. You can sand them rough. You can rough them up after you polish them. But being a body man for, you know, half of my life up till now, I can see where the chambers need to be reworked, and I'd redo it. And like I said, you can hold it up there and you can dye them, or however you know, you can actually physically measure them, but that gets to be uh, complicated and time consuming. So you know, and you're still working on a radius. So there's other tricks I'm sure that other people do, but I just thought I'd show you mine. Thanks for watching. Okay, so getting back to this head, I just finished up. Hopefully, it's going to be all right. We were talking about different ways of measuring the combustion chamber. And normally, what I've always done in the past, if I had to modify anything, I've got some cutters for my 3D cutting system for my Tobin art, and I'd go in and I'd profile this radius, and I'd profile this radius, and then I'd do a valve job. If I do any repair work, I always usually go back in and try to mimic this radius with the other ones. Obviously, when you start out with a fresh piece of paper, you can put any radius on it you want. And then once the valve is at a certain height, I mean, the rest is pretty much the combustion chamber being blended. And of course, you have wouldn't have the heads assembled. And I made this tool up a long time ago. Now this is the arbor pilot that would I use on my valve grinding equipment. And this is before I had my Tobin art. And I would scribe, lay out some marker and scribe. I made that a little, God, probably 20, 25, long time ago. And I don't know if you can buy anything like that, but they're easy enough to make. You can adjust this out, and if you wanted to strike this radius, you could, and this radius, you could. And then, you know, around here, you know, well, if you hand blend it or make a template of the pattern of the chamber that you desire, you can just go through and scribe it, and you know, you can make up patterns like that. And what I do is I cut them out, and then I sand them so they're smooth. And that's pretty thick cardboard. You can treat it just like a piece of wood. But if you look at this chamber here, it ain't too bad. There's a spot there where they welded it. They welded it all the way around here. They welded it all the way around here. And if you look at this chamber, it's nice and pretty much free of any kind of dents. Got a big dent here. I guess we could call it a void or a gouge, whatever you want to say. it's not the same radius here as it is there. It's different. That one's even more so flat than this one. If you look at them, this one's pretty much flat. This one isn't. And I guess, with a flat top piston, it really wouldn't matter, And I mean, there's a name stamped on this. A guy was proud enough to put his name on them. I'm not going to get into the work that he did, or I don't know who it is, and I don't care. You can look at around the spark plugs. They're all different. I'm not picking his work apart. I'm just explaining to you that the work that he did just ain't going to fly with these pistons. Now, you look at mine, I've got a fair amount of work in them. And they're relatively consistent from the radius. This one could be a little bit of Tootsie Roll action right there, maybe. Around the spark plugs, I said I'd never touch them, and I didn't. But you can see here how bad it is. And these heads, when you see this cloudiness on a head, pull it back a little bit. You see this cloudiness on a head? That means it's been welded. Now I can get it, the rod, the filler rod, and the gas and everything I use, I can get away from that. My spots where I weld will be wet and shinier than the parent material. And it's got some voids in it here. And like I said, I don't really want to pick his work apart. I'm just showing you this for instructional purposes only. Some days, when you weld in aluminum, it can just be a real pain in the butt, and but anyways, this raggediness around the combustion chamber, we can't do that. So I'm going to dye these, and of course, and restrike them and cut them out and work these chambers, so they are going to be more useful with the pistons that he's running. I guess that's all I wanted to say on this. And like I said, I don't know where you could get a tool like that. I just made it. You could probably find something somewhere. There's all sorts of different things you can do. Like I said, I'm not saying that this is the right way to do it. I'm not saying it's the only way to do it. I'm just saying this is what I've done for the last 30-some years. When I do this, I don't do it every day. I do it every once in a while, and to be quite honest with you, it's a lot of work, and it's not very fun when you can make more money milling cylinder heads. You're not going to find a lot of people are going to want to pay to have these things really done super nice. This was a job I didn't do. I'd rather not comment too much more than what I've already have on that. Other to say that no matter how bad these heads were, they would have never left my shop like that. Now, maybe the guy did it for free or whatever. And I guess if he did, I wouldn't have put my name on him. But we'll just leave it at that. Thanks for watching the videos. Please subscribe. Doesn't cost anything. And have a good one.